Hi, good afternoon, everybody. This is Adele Eden, Director of Development, acting CTO here at MAPPHARMATRAK USA. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everybody's doing all right for this webcast. I was asked again by Stephen to actually do, Stephen is our Director of MAPPHARMATRAK USA University. They are working on more professional presentations from their training slides and so forth. But I was asked actually to do a quick webcast today for our customers and mainly so they can eventually put it on YouTube, so people who are downloading our community version, our CV version, can actually deploy the application and know what are the different moving parts of our application. So I was asked to do this again, and I see on the invitation and on the chat, we have a full house. Anytime I got more than 10 people, I got a full house. So I do appreciate everyone. Some of our clients in Canada and some that are trying to come on board on the US side. So thank you all for coming for this webcast. I was actually given a limit of 30 minutes to do this. So I'm going to try to cover as much as I could within the next 30 minutes. So let's move on. Not a lot of slides here. I'm just going to talk high level. So once you get the community version, or if you're already signed in with us and you've downloaded the corporate version, what we call the corporate version, it's actually the paid version. You get all our tools and the different applications. I'm actually going to describe the different SKUs we have. We mainly have two SKUs, the CV version and the PV version. The community version that you can download from Microsoft App Store, or from some of the applications you can get from the Google Play. Once actually you send us an email, we usually we're pretty quick about sending you some form of not some form, but we do send you a licensing file that enable and disable some things, some features. And I'm going to talk about the different SKUs here, so you'll see the difference between the two. On the CV side, on the community version side, all we ask is you sign in with one of our gateways. It's a free version for the software, and you can actually deploy it on your hardware as long as you're running Windows 10 for the CV version. For the paid version, you can actually do it on some of the Linux. We actually do run on some flavors of Linux, but mainly you have to have some form of an Android, preferably version 6 and above. The caveat here is if you sign in with one of the gateways that do not have an Android services, then you're going to have to do it on a Windows platform. With that being said, let me move on to the next slide. So we already took 3 minutes here. I see still some people coming in. Let me just chat a little bit before I move on. We are actually working, almost every application on the paid side is ported to Android already, so you'll get an Android version of it. We have one application that's iOS, and that has to do with time management for clerks and employees, log in, log out. In fact, you can use that same app to log in. If you want to disable keyboard logging in into the POS, they can use the screen just like you would when you walk into Starbucks with a discount. You can use your phone to actually log in, and it's a feature that you can turn on and off, and you do actually get it with a CV version. The only problem is in the CV version you don't get the app itself, the time track app itself. So it's a catch-22. You get the services on the administrator server, but you don't really get the application itself to do it. So it's an unfortunate, but we're going to work on it because we think a lot of people are using it. Instead of having to have the old cards, which we support, by the way. You can use user ID cards or login cards or time cards if your company issue them, and you can go in the configurator and configure the login screen for the POS or the configurator itself or the administrator. You use that time card, but we have that iOS app that allows you to enter your time and allows you to actually log in into the POSs and into the rest of suite of products. I guess 5 minutes here, I can move on to the next slide real quickly. And it's busy, and if you got any of our PDFs, you've seen this one, or at least some incarnations of it. I've actually took it out and I don't want to say cleaned it up. I just reorganized some of the things to match more or less today's webcast. I call them bands. We have the most out-of-bound bands here. This is the full-fledged paid version. Everything you get is within the middle band. The most outer band here is most of the integration points. If you've used our application already, if you've seen some of the demos or walkthroughs, we have a wonderful mapper that allows us to map to anything to integrate with externally. So the outer bound here in this image are all the integration points. We obviously, those aren't any of our products. Those are external services offered by different vendors. Now, you will have to sign both on either on the paid side or on the CV side, on the community version side. You still have to sign in with one of our payment gateways. Now, with our mapper ability, we actually allow you to use whoever you have, as long as they transfer their MIDs or their accounts to us. So if you're in UBS in Canada, you're okay. We just remap it if you have a different gateway. In the US, we are actually in talks with the folks at Cayenne, the folks at Vantiv, some other ones, Vantiv being WorldPay, Cayenne being TSYS, I'm assuming here. We are talking with other vendors. We're talking with the guys at Chase and guys at BofA, Bank of America. So we'll see what the end result is. But by January, we're almost done with the Cayenne integration and almost done with the Vantiv with a WorldPay integration. If you're not familiar with the terms here, the payment gateway is where the credit cards get approved or declined and so forth. So that's the first integration point. Oops. Okay, let me go back. The second integration point is some states have DMV services for driver lookups. We do support on the med side and on our pharmacy side hazardous materials, and you can actually do them for mailouts and for just regular sales kind of thing. So some of these require DMV verification, especially if you actually on the hazardous material side, that an image of the license actually we take in the system, but we still verify the driver license number against state DMVs. I think that was part of the old federal government unified ID. Eventually, all states probably going to have it. I know North Carolina does. In Canada, we do have that, so that's available. You just have to check your state. The integration point is included, and we do ship a mapper to map our internal IDs to the state IDs. Room management service, that's the next one up here. I'm just moving the pointer to. I don't want to keep clicking because I keep moving to different slides. The room management service, we have a long history in the hospitality business, so we took those modules and we have modules that integrate with any room management service. So if your hospital, your clinic, your pharmacy sends stuff to rooms, either in the hospital or to meds to beds or somewhere off-site, or if you have a third-party management system for actual services for the room where you charge food and medication and so forth, we have an integration point for that. The pharmacy management system, we are actually in talks right now. We are going through the certification process with Epic, and whatever PMS you have, if you actually get on board, give us a letter request, we will actually approach the PMS or the hospital system. Those two up here, the management system and the hospital. We do a revenue cycle on the care side for hospital management. if you have care as your system in your hospital, then we can integrate with it. But if you have any other ones, again, we have a great mapper that map our internal IDs to whatever hospital management system or whatever PMS you're using, pharmacy management system you're using. On the pharmacy management system, we will use the MRN as a driver key. On the hospital management system, we'll use whatever the master patient ID or master patient key MPK to drive at least from the client, what we call person identity, to actually identify things that are charged for that individual. So on the PMS side, it's MRN. On the hospital side, it's the master patient ID. MPLEX is mainly for controlled substances. If you actually sell or ship or mail out methamphetamines or controlled substances in the United States and Canada, you actually have to verify the amounts sold within 24 hours, in some cases within a week. We really have no control over that. We actually get an approval or disapproval for MPLEX services. That's about MPLEX. Okay. Identity management. If you have the CV version, we do allow, and I did put a webcast last week because a lot of our RFPs were terrified by seeing some of the Microsoft and the Facebook and Twitter logins. But if you are on the corporate side, if you are on the paid version of MAPPHARMATRAK, we do integrate with identity management. It doesn't have to be any of those three. 4 actually we do LinkedIn too. But if you have a SDS, a secure token services in Azure, if you maintain your identity management something on AWS, for example, then we have services that actually will integrate with whatever identity management you have, as long as it's SAML 2.0, I think, standard. We do, on the community version, do identity management with third parties like Facebook, like LinkedIn, like Microsoft Live and Twitter. And for the simple fact that they're actually hosted, if you have the CV version, you're actually hosted on our cloud. So you don't have to get into the business of doing identity management yourself. So you can actually have your employees use whatever form of login they already have. Again, that's all hosted on our cloud. If you're corporate, if you're on the paid version, identity management does not include any of the public identity managements. It does not include services to Facebook or Microsoft or Twitter. You're strictly either going to a third party yourself and you configuring that, or you're actually going to our MPT, our MAPPHARMATRAK Enterprise for authentication. Okay, so moving forward, going down here in the list, let me move the mouse so people will know where I am. Okay, somebody just asked me, okay, the question is, can I have multiple logins? Yes, you can. For example, and we go through this through the walkthroughs when we sign an RFP with one of the clients. You can actually mix and match. We do allow that. We have a very extensive security model. We have something called not to go too far in detail here, but yes, you can. The answer to question, yes, you can actually have the same user have an MPT login, which is the MAPPHARMATRAK login. They can have an LDAP login, and they can have a Facebook login. So if they're logging in from home, they can see specific things. So yes, you can mix and match as long as your VPN or your firewall allows the traffic to come through. You can set the credentials differently for each different profile for that user. So our model is you log in, we identify the type of login, and then we check the credentials and the permissions for that type of login. So yes, you can mix and match. do we do Salesforce login? Not out of the box. We don't do. The question is, do we do Salesforce login? No. But most people who use Salesforce are using some form of a middle tier login. So if we can match, we do Salesforce integration, and that's usually for reordering over-the-counter items and to get customer lists, and that usually uses single account ID. But we do actually allow through the SDS services on the administrator side, on the administrator service server, to actually set an SDS going to Salesforce identity management, as long as the full stack of features is supported on their identity management. You should be able to use our middle tier, the SDS middle tier, the SAML tier, to actually talk to Salesforce. So I guess the answer is yes to an extent, but not out of the box. Okay, let me keep moving on, because I'm already at 16 minutes here. Replenishment services, that's mainly our ADI server. Not server, but it's ADI services. We actually, depending on which ADI, we do sell some over-the-counter items at cost just to keep the business going. But if you have specific ADI messages, we can use our mapper to map to our internal structure to actually import, export. We do support both push and pull. What does that mean? It means that if the server actually can push to our modeler, we will actually accept it. If we have a mapping, and if it's a pull, you set a timer to go out there and pull it from a specific location, at least on the EDI side. Salesforce integration, I just spoke about this because of the question. Real quickly, it's more integration on the client side. We do match MPKs to Salesforce, what is it called, clients. So if you're importing from Salesforce names, we can actually integrate with Salesforce. Now, on the administrative server side, we do not integrate on the CMS side, on the customer management services, but we will pull out of Salesforce using their API. If you have a client in-house systems that you want to integrate with, specifically using our administrative server to actually get, for example, statistics on performance and so forth, we do actually have an API list that supports both push and pull. So if you have we have a number of web services that your in-house client can call to get information, as long as we can match our internal IDs to external IDs. Microsoft Dynamics, the integration with Microsoft Dynamics, which is the last one in the outer band here for the paid products, is actually almost identical to the Salesforce, mainly getting customer information. So to summarize, most of those in the outer bound is really just integration points. We have a mapping engine that can map what we expect to these external services, and we can then dedicate if it's a push or a pull, so we can actually either send the data or get the data. Okay, so none of these products are MAPPHARMATRAK, though those are all external systems that we integrate with. Who's responsible for doing the integration? Now we go into the core of our products. So everything in that middle tier or middle bound, you see here that says DBServer, administrative server, database server, and web configurator. Those are this is where our product starts. So everything in the next two bands is part of the product, at least the paid product. I will show the the community version in a second. You need at least one DB server, one administrative server, to actually have a functioning MAPPHARMATRAK, either POS, administrator, configurator, or anything. You need at least one instant of the DB server running and one instant of the administrative server running. The DB server, we do support out of the box both SQL and Oracle. Actually, we support any database that has a provider, not an ODBC, but what's called entity framework provider, because DBServer is a Windows platform kind of service. DBServer is a Windows service that gets installed on Windows. When it first gets installed, it has a very thin interface. Really, the interface is just to configure two things, and that is the port the DBServer is listening to and the database information. Okay, it actually listens on port 2700 by default, but there is a tab in the DBServer app that ships with DBServer that allows you to change that. But once you change that, you have to go back to the administrator server, which is really the guts of the system. This is where most of the work does, and administrator server have to come up next. So, and I'll show the sequence of how we deploy the different components in a minute. God, I'm doing a minute here. Okay, moving forward real quickly, administrator server is where most of our APIs live. This is where most of the functionality exists. The DBServer, administrator server talk to each other. Out of the box, administrator server talks to DBServer on port 2700. It listens back on 2700. Excuse me. It talks on the DBServer itself is on port 27,000. The administrator server has two ports. It listens on 27,005 and it sends on 2710. Both of those are actually configurable. Now you can have, depending on the load and once you run the enterprise application for a couple of days and you see that you're getting a bottleneck on the database, you can bring other DB servers up and they'll start collecting statistics and so forth for you. Administrator server is where most of the clients talk to, and you can bring as many as you want administrator servers. They do actually ship with IIS Express. Administrator server itself is a Windows-based application or services. It uses IIS to host the APIs. But it has its own interface too for things like exporting stuff for data warehousing, for example. It's responsible for issuing commands for the DB server to run extractions and so forth. Really, administrator server is the guts of our application. And if you notice that you're getting clunky, or I don't say clunky, but you're getting a little bit above sub-second performance through the other components, you may want to bring up multiple administrator servers, and they can be distributed across the enterprise, and administrator servers can be in different regions, different locations. As long as administrator servers can talk to a DB server, they can actually do their work. But they're the engine, and they synchronize between each other. Once you bring one additional one up, you have to actually tell the other ones about it. But they do communicate to each other, and they actually allocate resources. And if you bring two in the same region, they will actually communicate, and they will do round robining type balancing and so forth. So if you're having some performance issue, for example, with your POS being a bit slow, maybe that administrative server is being hammered, so you can bring another one up, and you can make all the other clients connect to it, or new clients connect to it. We have clocked some of these servers, depending. If you have an administrative server that's hefty, that's got a good CPU and a good chunk of RAM, 16 and above, it can easily handle roughly about between 20 to 25 lanes fine. And this is so you can get sub-second performance. If you're willing to live a little bit with, let's say, second and a half transaction commits, then you really don't have to worry. A single administrator server will be sufficient. But again, if you have one of those pharmacies, one of those hospitals that people don't want to wait, and you want to have sub-second performance, you can actually bring up multiple administrative servers, as long as they are all talking to a specific DB server. Okay. Next one down here under administrator is the Web Configurator. Web Configurator is a really very thin version of our fat configurator. And really the reason for actually even having it, since we actually support every OS out there almost, because some people some users get locked out, some users password expire and they wanted it reset. So we have a very thin subset of the API support that exists in the thick configurator, this one down here. We have some pages out there that exist in that web configurator application. The web configurator application still have to talk to administrator server. Okay. Now, moving to the left side of the screen here, the database server, and I only got 5 minutes. God, I didn't even finish the first slide. The database server is whatever database server you have. When you configure the DBServer, this database server is not truly any of our products, but we do test with SQL and SQL Express, and Oracle. Some people who are using SQLite, especially if you're a small pharmacy or if you're a small clinic, that you have a light use, you don't go over a million records a year or so. Since you do get our historian by default, even on the CV side, you can actually move the data to a different storage device. We have a historian that actually you can set in the administrator tools to actually move data around for storage. Moving along at the bottom here now, getting into that middle band here. All 3 servers here are optional. There is a 4th server we're working on. It's SMS texting server. But the media server is strictly to work with kiosks. And if you have, you can get part of the enterprise configured, the numbering system. So when people come in, they take a ticket, numbering dispenser, for example, if you have a numbering dispenser. And then from the POS, as they're ringing, they want to ring the next sale, one of the menu options would be to actually ask for the next number. You just configure in the morning the beginning and end numbers of that ticker. So one of the things that the kiosks actually would have, one of the kiosks we have would be lane numbering system. So if you have multiple lanes in your pharmacy or in your hospital for payments, especially if you're a community clinic or something, you can actually allow people to take from a dispenser a number, and they can sit down and you activate this module and they can see their number coming on the lane, just like you would in a DMV probably. I've seen them a lot in the DMV part, or when you're getting a driver license. So which I will talk more about the kiosks in a second. But those 3 servers down here, the media server, as I said, that's mainly for kiosks. Now, one of the things the media server does is it can feed ads. So one of the applications that runs on kiosks is actually the bottom screen can be really an ad. You can have a WAV file or a media file playing at the bottom of the screen, or you can make it actually the full screen in the next release. So again, the media server is strictly for kiosks. In Canada, we do a lot of mail out business here. To the United States, we do have a mail out server, and this strictly handles stuff like mailing and taking payments offline and so forth when the customer is not present. The functionality is to deal with any functions that had to do with mail out, sorry. So mail out can be shipping to somebody's house. So if you have a business in which you contract Uber to come in and pick up stuff, and mail out has that type of functionality. Email is a way to actually have all the inner-band information being emailed to the customer. There is, as I said, one more component that I don't have on the slide. It's coming. It will be the SMS texting message. Okay, I got 1 minute to do all the internal ones here. So the drive window track app, the meds to beds track app, the doorbuster track, the time card track, and the put away track are all thick client applications. If you want to think of them that way, they're really thin client apps because you download them from the App Store. Once they are configured, they will connect to an administrator server and they will work as such. The drive window is really, in a sense, a full POS. The mid-2 beds track is another slimmed version. Only thing different is it doesn't take checks, for example. It has a minimum number set of payment types. The doorbuster is I've seen them here in Chick-fil-A's where you can actually stand outside and start bringing people orders in. Here you would be actually bringing in their medication or whatever item they requested. For example, if they're actually renting, which we do support renting, if they renting, for example, a breathing device, you can have somebody, if you have a long line, standing out there putting these, taking these kind of orders, and in the back, at the back, somebody will be running our enterprise administrator, and we'll see that somebody requested a breathing device, and they can go into a warehouse or a different room to get it. So by the time somebody goes into or gets to the window, they have it available. Put away track is really a way for, and this is just added recently. This is from a previous life in my situation. It allows you to really contact mainly the PMS, since this doesn't really apply to a lot of hospital stuff, but to contact the PMS for the pharmacy side and download the records and the information and get it, and once it's actually ready for dispense, which rack it's sitting on, or is it in a refrigerator, or is it sitting on some robotic arm somewhere. You use it is tablet based, and I'll talk about each version in a minute. Moving forward, we have the configurator. The configurator is how you talk to DBServer and administrator server. Here's how you configure them. The administrator application, those are the ones down here. Those are strictly software applications, and if you see the icons here a little bit different, because they can run on a tablet or they can run on a full-fledged computer. The administrator is where you would actually execute reports, see who's logged in. If you want to see, if you're in real time, you want to see what every register should have, or every tray should have in it, or every till, how much money's in it, who is logged in, who's logged out. Mainly the business of doing business is mainly ran on the administrator side. The configurator is where we actually configure things. The administrator actually do for our paid customers, depending on the contract you sign, you may actually get simulators. We do have simulators for different POSs, so you can actually create different layouts and run them without having to install them on a POS just to see how it behaves. Of course, the last thing is our flagship MPT POS, which is the MAPPHARMATRAK point of sale. This is a hardware-software solution. We do support on the hardware side military-style ID logins. So if you have a C2 and you can issue C2 cards for logging in, logging out into POS, you can use that. We do actually support, as I said earlier, our time card app, this app right here, and this app right here does have a screen on it that actually would show a barcode, QR type, that you can use if you enable that functionality to log in into the POS. So they don't even have to have a user ID or anything. You just tell them to go in. They put in the first time, then login ID downloads. Once they download the app from the App Store, they can come in and just scan it. That's about it for the paid version. Now let me move to the CV version or the community version real quickly. There's not much to cover at this point. You'll see that you don't have a lot of things. It's the same components at this point. Same, almost, not almost, it's exactly the same integration points, but you get less. Of course, this is free, so you get the application for free. We don't charge you annual charge or anything for using it. The only caveat with the CV version is you have to go with one of our gateways. You don't pay for, there is no, we give you an open license ID, so there is no expiration date or anything like that, and you do actually get free upgrades. You can actually always go to the Windows App Store or go to Google Play and download the latest version of what you're allowed to run with that key we give you, and you can use it forever, as I said, as long as you're using one of our gateways. The software, the community version, is free. Now, Mainly if you're just going to run a POS, point of sale, for any reason, then you would download the community version and would run it. Now, the community version is Windows 10 only, and I'll talk about the different versions, but it's Windows 10 only. In fact, when we talk about Windows here, we're only talking about Windows 10. We really don't support any older versions of Windows. We think Windows 10 is moving forward going to be the platform of choice. So at least for people who are using Windows, since Windows 7 is going to supposedly get out of service 2019, but we'll see. But when we talk about Windows, we're really strictly talking about Windows 10. And not any Windows 10 is actually version 18.01. So as of December 2018, that was the latest version. We do that in the community version. You have to upgrade your version to the latest Windows. So as if you're on the corporate, you're still in the paid version. You still have to have Windows 10 18.01. I think it's 18.01. It's either 18.01 or 18.05. But the community version, as you can see, it gives you the basic POS free of charge. We do support less hardware. For example, the type of scanners we support are limited. But if you have a scanner that has a Windows 10 driver, it probably would work. The same applies for identification IDs or time card readers. As long as they have Windows 10 drivers and the CV side, they will work. If I go back, we do support a much larger list on the paid side. For at least on the scanning side, on the handheld scanners, we do support out-of-the-box code. Code is our preferred. We do support some of the HP scanners. We do support definitely the Honeywells of the world, so you get a much bigger list. We are actually working right now on the thin version for the paid version SKU. There is a very nice medical scanner that Honeywell makes. It's a white in shape and it's really thin and it's handy to carry. That we will actually have full support in Windows 10 for it coming soon, hopefully by the end of the first quarter next year. Okay, moving forward. So this is a comparison of what you see between the two different versions, the paid and the community version. In the community version, you get your basic POS functionality, really. You still have to install the DBServer administrator server. Okay, somebody's asking, do they have to be two different boxes, two different machines? No. On the community version, almost everything you see on that slide in the two inner bands can run on the same machine. So by default, actually, that's how our deployer would do it, and how our deployment team will do it, is install it all first on one machine, test the whole thing, and then start adding services to different machines as they grow. But no, you can install all these components on a single machine. Now, if you're going to do that and run the database and the whole 9 yards, you're not going to get the sub-second performance, and the administrator server report for performance coming out of the DB server is going to be all red. But yes, you can run all this. Now, if you have a 64 gig PC that has, running an i9 or something, then yes, you probably won't see any degradation. But and in this scenario, you're probably not looking at a couple of million records. We're looking at a low volume at that point. But in general, yes, whenever you see DBServer administrator server, they can be on the same box, they can be on a separate box, they can be in different countries for all practical purposes. As long as there is a secure internet connection between them. But yes, we design them to run on the same server, on the same machine. But yes, you can actually spread them around. As I said, if you were looking at a sub-second performance, we're looking at roughly about 25 lanes. 25 lanes. When I say lanes, I mean applications. So if you have a total of 25 applications connecting, being a POS, being a time card application, being a doorbuster, if you have a total of 25 different devices connecting to administrating server, once you get to the 26, we recommend at that point spinning another VM or another machine or whatever your infrastructure dictates and have that administrative server running on it. Again, it's just, and this is with the hardware we tested with, which is our hardware. Now, as I said, if you have one of those super duper servers, you live in a farm where, bandwidth is the sky and everything is super duper hardware wise, or you can run VMs with large number of RAM availability, then you may end up only using one administrator server. So yes, to answer your question, you sure can run them. In fact, if you have less than 10 lanes, so if you're a small pharmacy, if you have 1 or 2 registers, then for all practical purposes, that's what we recommend. Run everything on a single machine. That's about it here. Let me move on. Okay, setup sequence. Oh God, I'm already over 30 minutes. Okay, setup sequence. And when you get the community version or the paid version usually we do the deployment, so you don't have to worry about this. But so everybody will be on the same page and everybody knows the sequence of things. Administrators, the way we install and the way the application expect the deployment to happen is you have to bring up a DBServer first. The reason for that is the DBServer is what talks to the database, collects statistics. In a nutshell, it's the serializer. It's what how data ends up being somewhere on storage. So it has to come up first before anybody else. So when you get the community version, you don't really see that, but it does install the DBServer first. If you have the paid version, the installation for DBServer is separate than the administrative server. And that goes back to the question, is can I run them all in the same box? If you got the CV version, the community version, you actually don't have that capability other than to put them all in the same box. Because once you download it from the App Store, it actually internal to the application itself. They all get the same key. So even though they're 2 separate kind of binaries, they actually use the same process ID key from the App Store, and they run on the same box. Now you can do the same thing, get another community version installed on a separate box, and go and disable a DBServer on one and have it available on the other, and go that way. And it is an acceptable deployment. I mean, if you're just going to use the community version, you want to do some load balancing without having to pay any extra fees for any licensing, be my guest. You download 4 or 5 versions of it. You still have to call us and get 4 or 5 keys. But then each one of those instances have to have a specific med, and it has to be on our gateway account. Not MAPPHARMATRAK, but one of the gateways that we actually recommend. So the ones we use. So the DBServer comes up first, and you have to configure it. It has to talk to the database and the whole 9 yards. Once it's up and running, then you can bring up the administrative server. The administrative server actually will ask you during setup to actually which DBServer to talk to, the IP. The administrative server and DBServer don't talk through web services. They're actually talking strictly TCP. So there's nothing there to see. There's no web server to install, nothing. They're actually talking to each other directly, communicating through ports directly to each other. And that's usually the state. Any administrating server will actually talk to the designated DBServer directly. That's why the DBServer have to come up first. Once you get an administrative server running, you're really kind of done with the enterprise part, but now you have to configure things. So once you bring the administrative server up, the first thing you need to do in our system is to create an administrator for the system. So you have to either run the configurator, or on the community version you do get that, and you'll have the icon. It's part of the setup for the community version. It will actually shoot up or bring up the configurator UI for you to create. Actually, you have to create 3 things immediately, at least on the community version and on the enterprise. But again, we do that for the customers on the paid side. So the first thing you have to create is a corporation. So you give us the data, the information about the corporation. Second thing you do is you have to create the admin user. The third thing is you need to create a site. Those are the 3 things for the enterprise server to function correctly. It immediately needs those 3. So you have to bring up a configurator, point it to administrator server that you just installed, and configure those 3. Once you do that, then really at that point you have a fully functioning enterprise application. And that's the same for both the community version and the paid version. Now you can use the configurator immediately to either connect to LDAP because you have an LDAP, or if you're just a small shop, once you install the administrator server, you actually go in the configurator and configure your, if you're using, for example, Facebook login, the administrator server will talk to our hosted services and allow you to actually create the users and so forth. The functionality of the administrator server is different between community version and paid version. The administrator server on community version is a pass-through to our cloud, where on the paid version it's actually a version of what we run on the cloud that you get in-house. It's a full-fledged application that you run internally, and everything we do on our cloud you can do internally in-house at that point. So the administrative server on the CV side, you're actually just passing through to our cloud. And you can still do federated security and so forth, create groups, remove groups. Everything you need to run a POS locally will be available in a pass-through mode in the CV side, on the community version side. The next installation step would be actually to do the enterprise servers, the different media servers, mail out, email. Obviously, we have the texting server here. It's still in beta. If you get the texting server, you have to actually sign in with one of our customers, one of our services that we have third-party companies that we deal with to send text messages. So you sign in with us, but we don't actually do the physical texting. We actually pass it through to that third-party company, but you have to go through one of the ones we choose, one of the ones we have contracts with. And we actually worked out good deals with a lot of them. Well, not a lot of them, we only have 3. We worked out good deals with them, 1 in Canada and 2 in the US. But if you get the texting server, the SMS I call it the SMS server, but the texting server, you actually have to sign in with one of our providers. And the last thing you would install at that point is our MAPPHARMATRAK POS and the gateway. Okay, the gateway components. Now, the setup sequence for the community version is a lot smaller, of course, because we don't have all this stuff in the middle here, the middle tier servers. That's all handled on our side on the cloud. But you do still have to actually install, believe it or not, you do have to install DBServer, even though you are not going to configure a database. An administrative server, when it first comes up, you actually have to give it the URL that we give you in the email. So when you get the email, you have a URL that connects, that has your credentials and stuff to actually make the administrative server knows the backend or the cloud server that it needs to talk to, which actually takes out of the equation offline mode, which we do support on the POSs for the paid version. On the community version, you have to be online. There's no offline mode. You cannot take payments or anything like that. If you go offline. Again, you still need the configurator, so the steps, the first and second steps happen automatically for you. You don't really see that happen, but you'll get a sequence of dialog boxes to configure both of them as you go, and we do send you in the email all the steps you need for that to happen. Again, the administrative server on the community version is a pass-through to our cloud. So we can maintain consistency between the different versions, you still do need the administration server installed. And again, once you install it, you have to go in the configurator and at least create a single account. That would be created on our cloud, but it will be what you use to configure additional users and so forth. And the last thing, of course, the POS and the gateway. And I'm going to try to move real quickly here. Okay, so different OSs that we do support, different versions. As I said, both DBServer and administration server are going to be Windows. If you're on the it's either paid or community, you don't have a choice. It has to run on Windows 10. On the configurator, the app, we are in beta. We're in final step on having an Android version of it. So you can have it on your Android phone or an Android tablet or Windows tablet. There is a lot of request for a Mac version and iOS version, at least an iOS version for the bigger 12-inch tablets, iPads. It's coming. We just don't have a timeline for it. The last thing is the POSs. The POSs, we do have an Android version. Of course, we always have the Windows version first, but we do have Android version as long as you sign up with a gateway that actually has components that can run on that OS. For example, we can actually run Cayenne on almost every OS. So if you signed in with Cayenne, then you can have both versions. You can either run Windows or Android tablet as your POS, and you should be good to go. Now, WorldPay, for example, we use their Vantiv SDK, and last I checked on their website, there was not an Android version. But once one comes out, you'll be able to have it, and that will be available on the community version too. So, and that's about it. I got a ton of questions, but I went over time, way over time. It's been 52 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually email everybody. Everybody that's on this webcast, kindly make sure you got, well, actually almost everybody put their email. Yeah, if you did not put your email in, I'll collect all these questions and send a reply to each and every one of them, since I went way above time. Thank you very much for attending my webcast. Thank you for your business. We appreciate it on the U.S. side, on the Canadian side. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Hopefully, there'll be a much better organized presentation coming from MAPPHARMATRAK University related to this, but we needed to start putting stuff out since our division is new and people going, what is all this stuff? So we needed to start doing this stuff. So I'm kind of commissioned to do a lot of these. So you'll see a lot of this come through, but eventually MAPPHARMATRAK University is going to have a lot more organized once that follows more of our curriculum. If you're interested, of course, in the details, we do offer, MAPPHARMATRAK University offers full courses 4 times a year for Train the Trainer. Goes from, you can actually take administration of the MAPPHARMATRAK Enterprise, or the MAPPHARMATRAK Enterprise, or you can take the development side. Most of our platform is extendable, so you can actually go through and tinker with it and change some things. Thank you very much for attending my webcast, and you all have a wonderful afternoon. And hopefully I will email each and every one that attended. We had full house today, as I said, above 10, so I have a full house. Appreciate it. Thank you all, and I'll talk to you all later. Thank you.